We welcome TCU coach Sonny Dykes. And Sonny, I have to ask you about this because I've heard you talk about last year's team, and I know we've turned the page and everything. But if I had told you at this point in camp last year, you guys are going to play for the Big 12 title, you're going to win a playoff game, you're going to play for the national title, how quickly would you have had me committed?
Quickly. I mean, you know how it is. You go someplace and there's so much that needs to be done. And, we had a good spring. Felt like our players worked hard leading into spring ball. We had a productive spring, but we had some significant issues that we needed to address, depth wise, and we needed to stay healthy. And a lot of things had to happen just because of the makeup of the team. And they all happened. And sometimes it doesn't work that way, but that bunch, really made the most of the opportunities they had last year. Guys played hard. We got better every week. We got confidence. About the third week of fall camp last year, I thought, this is a pretty good team. We'll have a chance and we'll be competitive. And, to our players' credit, they just kept building and kept getting better and won some games that, were hard to win.
With the transfers, you had a big impact out of the transfer portal last year. You're going to need a big one this year. But for example, like your cornerback, Josh Newton, who you got from Louisiana Monroe last year, did you know by now what kind of impact he was going to have?
He's an interesting guy. What makes Josh such a good player? I mean, he's obviously a good athlete. He's got good size. He's rangy. He can run. But it's just his competitive spirit, his competitive nature, and his desire to get better. And so when you watch somebody on film and you don't really know him, you can see his size and athleticism and all that. But then you get him here and you go, wow, this kid's special. Just his work ethic and his toughness. And, he loves football. And the guy just loves to play, loves to practice, loves to watch film. He's the first guy in after practice to watch the tape. He's one of the last guys to leave at night. So sometimes you don't know what you're going to get until you get him here. And we knew his personality was good, but we had no idea what his work ethic was going to be like and what his commitment was going to be like. And, fortunately, we have a lot of guys on our team that are built that way. They're just competitive guys. They're players that may have been overlooked during the recruiting process, whatever the case may be. But, they want to be good players. It's important to them, and they work really hard.
Well, and it seems like the chemistry of last season's team was just so special. What sort of notes did you take from that? Because it's not something you can just bottle and recreate, but how can you kind of help it along toward that point?
Yeah, the great thing is that, the guys on this year's team, a big part of them were on last year's team, and they saw the leadership. They saw, Chandler Morris had an opportunity to sit back and watch Max Duggan and learn from Max and learn how he handled adversity, not being the starter going into game one and how he just kept working hard, kept his head down. And so I think everybody on our team had a chance to see that. I think it had a huge impact on all of us, really. And our players, learned a lot from that run last year. I mean, they saw how important leadership was. They saw how important it was to battle through adversity. We had some games early on where we were down 17 points in the second half, and guys kept believing and kept fighting and rallied and got us to 12-0 in the regular season. And so, there was a lot of stuff, again, a lot of plays that we had to make and a lot of things that guys had to do that weren't always easy. So this year's bunch, I feel really good about our leadership. We're still trying to figure out who exactly are going to be the go-to guys, but we have enough candidates. We really do. We have guys that are bought into the program, that work hard, that have enough skins on the wall to be leaders. And then we have some new additions to our program as well, guys that are starting to really take those leadership reins and starting to lead more consistently.
So you mentioned your quarterback, Chandler Morris. I heard him say something the other day that kind of, it was the record stretch. Like, huh? Did he really say that? Okay, so you're working a couple different guys at center. So he's got to figure out how to take snaps from all of them. Chandler claims he has the best hands on the team. Any truth to that?
You know what? He's got pretty good hands. I mean, it's funny. You don't think about that as a quarterback, but it's important. I mean, these guys are catching the ball all the time. And
more than anybody else.
They probably catch more balls than anybody. Exactly. And, they're doing it all day, every day. And Chandler has been taking a lot of snaps since he was a little kid. His dad was obviously a football coach and very successful one. And so he is no telling how many balls he's caught in his life. And he does have an ability to catch the ball and get it out of his hand very, very quickly. And again, you can tell it's a skill that he's been working on since he was a young kid.
Now, Chandler's dad was a high school coach when he was little, but Chandler mostly grew up with his dad as a college coach. How much do you think seeing kind of the broad spectrum, because Chad kind of went through everything in the last
Yeah.
few years, seeing the broad spectrum of that helped Chandler deal with last year?
Yeah, I think we all learn. I was fortunate enough to grow up. My dad was a coach, a high school coach, and ended up being a long time college coach as well. And when you're around your dad every day, and you see, number one, how hard you have to work, and number two, the ups and downs of football, whether it's high school football, college football, whatever the case may be. It's galvanizing. I mean, you really learn a lot from it. You do have an opportunity to see how important it is to keep your priorities straight. And probably one of the biggest things I learned from my dad was to never get too high, never get too low. It's always, we say it all the time, the film is never as bad as it looks, and it's never as good as it looks. And the reality is usually somewhere in the middle. And
Yeah.
I think Chandler's had an opportunity to learn that from Chad. As you said, Chad was a fast riser, through the ranks, very successful high school coach, had success at SMU, and, has encountered some difficult times since then. And that's part of being a coach, part of being a player. We've all been through it. I went through it myself at Cal, and it's no fun to go through something like that. But, Chad's a guy that's going to have a real bright future. And Chandler, I think, taking it one day at a time and realizing that, when you have success, you got to wake up the next day and find a way to do it all over again.
You mentioned your time at Cal. I'm curious, as that was ending, in your mind, are you thinking, I know what kind of coach I am, I know what I can be? Or is there some reflection? Do you have to go back and reevaluate everything?
Yeah, I mean, look, you reevaluate everything anyway. I was lucky though. I got fired at Cal in 2016 and had a chance to come to TCU in 2017 to work for Gary Patterson, and as an analyst, and just learned a ton. It was good for me because, as you said, I don't care who you are, when you're not as successful as you think you're going to be or you want to be, then it affects your confidence. And I think when I got here to TCU in 17. I was thinking, man, we didn't do this right. We didn't do that right. If I had it all, I would do this all over again. And I really learned, probably as much as anything else from being here, that we weren't that far off the mark. We really weren't. There were some things that we needed to change. We needed to improve. But I think that the one thing probably I learned more than anything else is just how important fit is, whether fit as a player, fit as a coach, fit as a program. And then the second thing was just the importance of leadership. From the top down. And, if you're going to be successful in college football, it starts with the leaders of the university. It starts with your chancellor and your president, and obviously carries down to your athletic director. And if you don't have strong leadership, you don't have a chance. And that's the bottom line. And it's very difficult to win. And you have to have everybody pulling the rope the same way. And so that was a great lesson for me. And I was fortunate enough to end up at TCU, where I think we have some of the best leadership in college athletics for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like you got good news this week, because it seems like somebody was sniffing around your AD, and he's happy where he is. So that's probably great for you guys.
It is, yeah. I think if you spend some time here in Fort Worth and at TCU, you're going to realize this is a really cool place, really special place, great place to live. It's a big city, 13th largest city in the country, Fort Worth is, but it feels like a small college town, and so you really get the best of both worlds. I like to go eat and go do stuff and have fun. When we're not in season, and you can do all that in Dallas and Fort Worth, and you have this huge metroplex right here, and great places to eat, great entertainment options, but you also have a small kind of college town feel. You have the unwavering, undying support of Fort Worth. Fort Worth is all in on TCU, and it makes it a really fun place to live and to go to work every day.
Yeah, those bacon burn-ins from Heim Barbecue would have me ready to sign probably in about 30 seconds. So that would be easy.
No question.
You mentioned fit, and you again had to, this is just a reality for everybody. Your roster will change so much every year because of the transfer portal. You brought in a bunch of guys this year, especially on offense, because I know you're a little deeper on defense right now, but Trey Sanders, a running back from Bama, JoJo Earl from Bama, Tommy Brockermeyer from Bama. They didn't all come from Bama, but JP Richardson from Oklahoma State. You've got a Jackson State transfer who you can, mine for info on Dion for the first game.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, we've got a lot of transfers. We have another wide receiver that's been very impressive, Jalen Robinson, so far, came from Ole Miss. And, it's funny, almost all those guys were guys that we had some kind of experience with. We either tried to recruit them before, We knew him. John Paul Richardson, as you talked about, came over, and his dad Bucky and I are good friends, and you know, some family ties go way back, and so there's a lot of guys that, although they may be new to our program, that we've actually known for a long time, either through the recruiting process. The Brockermeyers are from Fort Worth. Jalen Robinson's from Fort Worth. JoJo Earl is from Aledo. And so these are all guys that, went off to different schools and have had a chance to come back. And it's been good for them. I think it's great for them to be close to home, around friends and family and people that can be supportive of them. And, those guys are all good football players, and they're going to make a big impact in our program. And as you said, fit is important. I mean, those guys fit what we're looking for. They have the right kind of mentality. They're obviously talented players, but being home, there's nothing like having a chance to play at home.
Is that something you told your staff at SMU and now at TCU? Because the DFW produces so many players. Do you say, hey, look, when they say thanks but no thanks, you say, hey, keep the relationship open, be nice, make sure everybody still loves everybody in case that comes around?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our first year at SMU, we had Reggie Robertson, was a kid from Mesquite that came home and ended up being a really good player for us. And then, the next year we were fortunate enough to get Shane Buechele. Shane came over, was at Texas and was from Arlington. And, Shane really changed our program at SMU. I mean, he just came in and provided such a spark and gave us that kind of leadership and quarterback play that we needed, and went on now. He's in the NFL with Kansas City, and I'm sure he'll have a long NFL career. But he, you got to get those kind of kids. And the great thing was, as you said, in the Metroplex, whether at SMU or TCU, these kids go off sometimes to school, and maybe it doesn't work the way they want it to. Shane played at Texas as a true freshman and got banged up a little bit, lost the job, and needed a fresh restart. And we were fortunate enough to convince him to come home and play close to home. And so I think Dallas, Fort Worth, Metroplex, provides tons of opportunities for us to go out and get kids to come back and play for a program that's going to play in big games on a national stage and have a chance to win championships.
So you opened against Colorado. I remember watching you guys against Colorado last year. I don't think I had many people with me watching that game late at night, but this time it's going to be everybody watching the team that just played for the national title against Coach Prime. How do you handle that, though, when their roster has turned over, like unrecognizable from what you played last year? Do you watch Jackson State for Shadur and Kent State for what Sean Lewis is going to call?
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, you start with scheme. And so, as you said, you got to watch the coordinators and kind of where those guys were and what they did before. And then you try to, watch the guys that are going to be important players. Obviously, Shadur's was at Jackson State, so we'll spend a lot of time watching his tape and trying to evaluate what he can do well and what he can't do well, and what he struggles with. And and the important thing I think for us, honestly, and I think it's always this way going into the first game, is you have to prepare for your opponent, but really more than anything else, you have to just prepare to go play well. You're going to see things that you don't expect. It's going to happen no matter who you play. People are always going to make changes, in the off season and make adjustments. And this is going to be much different because, again, we're not even going to bother watching Colorado's film from last year. There's no point of doing that. New schemes, new players, new everything. So it'll be a complete challenge for us and something that'll be different. But the main thing we have to do is just make sure our team's ready to play, that we can go out and we can minimize mistakes. We can, take care of the football. We can be sound on special teams, all the things that get you beat early, no pre-snap penalties, explosive plays, all the things that matter to winning and losing, especially matter in early ball games. I mean, those things are all magnified in your first 2 or 3 ball games.
Can your new OC, Kendall Briles, help with that? Because Sean Lewis, their new coordinator, who was Kent State's head coach, obviously comes from the same family tree as Coach Briles. That offense is pretty similar.
Yeah. I mean, Kendall will be able to help us, and Sean will be able to help them. And so, I think those two things will kind of negate each other. But, again, as I said earlier, I'm sure he'll evolve to the players. I mean, that's the good thing about the system that Kendall runs is it's a system that can plug and play. I mean, you can put in, if you got a lot of really good receivers, you could get into 5 wide. If you got a lot of really good tight ends, you can play with 12 or 13 personnel. There's just a lot of different things you can do to take advantage of the players that you have. And so, both those guys are really good coaches, and they'll both have their teams ready to play.
Yeah, it's funny. Everybody thinks that's a wide open passing offense. That offense is designed to run for 400 yards a game if it's working right.
Yeah, I think that's what really has drew me to Kendall, honestly, and drew me to this offense that they've been running for a while. It's just their ability to run the football. And I think if you look at our team last year, that's what made our team good, was we could consistently run the ball, and we ran it against good people. And we got to get better. I mean, we really do. We got to be able to run it in short yardage situations better and do some things better than we did last year. But we need to be able to run the football. We have to be a physical football team. I think, people think, I'm an air raid guy, grew up in the air raid, and everybody thinks you just drop back and throw the ball all the time. We were 55% run last year, and so we believe in running the ball and think it's important.
So your defense, much deeper than last. I know you rolled out a spring practice last year, I think, with 5 scholarship defensive linemen had to fill through the portal. It feels like you have so much back. But I was impressed with how you could play complementary football last year. I go back to the Texas game where that didn't look like most of your other wins. Was that something you decided Sunday, Monday going into that game, this is going to be the strategy, or is it something that happened during the flow of the game?
Yeah, I bet if you ask me and Steve Sarkisian both, I mean, we would have said it would have been a shootout. Just 2 really good offenses and 2 defenses that probably hadn't been quite as good as the offenses up to that point, and all of a sudden it's a 3-0 ball game at halftime. I don't think anybody anticipated that. Your job as a coach is you have ideas about how you think things are going to go and ideas about, this is going to be a shootout. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, both defenses come out and play really well. And so what we had to do was change our mentality a little bit as the game went on and take a little bit less risk. If you're gonna get into a high scoring ball game, then you're gonna go for it a little bit more on 4th down. Field position's not that important. Well, if it's a low scoring ball game, then field position's critical. You got to do a great job punting. Special teams become really important, and so as the game progressed, our mentality had to change to adapt to what was happening. And as I said earlier, that's one of the things that I think we do well is. Every game is its own game, and every game you want to win it different ways. And we won that game playing great defense and punting the ball and not turning the ball over. And then we got into a shootout against Michigan where we had to score a bunch of points. And
which is not what you thought that game was going to be.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's what I liked about our team last year is, we could figure out different ways to win games. And, you look at the Baylor game, we struggled offensively most of that game, and we're able to rally and figure out how to win that too.
Yeah, that Friday walkthrough where you're making sure everybody knows what special team they're on and can get organized very quickly probably came through big time in that Baylor game.
It did, yeah. I mean, when you have the kind of season we had last year, you're going to have to win some games like that, and I'm sure we're going to have to win some this year. And so that's attention to detail is going to be a big deal for us, having our guys prepared for situational football. I mean, if you look at our league. The league, there's not much difference between the teams at the top of the league and the teams at the bottom. And so every single week it's going to be very competitive. And the team that makes the fewest mistakes is oftentimes going to be the team that wins.
So I can't let you go without asking about the freshman on your roster who blew up the internet this week. So Breon Ramsey Brooks, Bubba.
Yep.
He is an impressive looking 6'5", 455. How's he doing in camp?
You know what? He's actually doing well. He's much further along than we thought he would be. He's a guy that, coming in, we knew was going to be a little bit of a project. He's a really big guy. He's surprisingly athletic for someone as big as he is. And the thing I love about Breon is he's worked really hard. I mean, he's got a great work ethic. He came in, we started slow, we kind of progressed. We knew, he needed to get in shape, and we weren't just going to throw him out there, day one, but he's progressed. He's probably ahead of the benchmarks that we thought he would be at. And he's a really, really good athlete. I think he's learning how to work. And so I'm really excited about his future. He's a great kid, got a great personality. He's obviously got tremendous size. And for someone his size, I mean, he can really move. And so, he's one of those kids that if he continues to progress, he's got a bright future.
I know, Coach. Please don't ask me about the true freshman offensive lineman. I understand it takes a while to develop, but I appreciate that because I had to ask because he was all over the internet this week. He handled that okay?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think he was surprised. I think we all were a little bit. I mean, these things kind of sometimes take on a life of their own, and you're not quite sure why they do. And I guess it's a little bit of a curiosity because he's a big guy. There's not too many, 450-pound college football players out there, but he's a guy that, I mean, he's going to play big. I mean, he's a big person. He's going to, eventually get down into 300s, and that's, where he's going to end up playing. And, he's handled it well. I think he's been a little surprised by all the attention. And I think he's just one of those kids that just wants to go to work and realizes he's got some work to do. But as I said, man, he's really talented. He's a super kid. He's a lot of fun. I mean, kid's got a ton of personality, and I'm, like I said, excited about his future.
Coach, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.